Hi, and welcome to Seek, Receive, and Communicate Information Ideas, Video 2. So obviously in this dot point, the first thing we're doing is seeking data. So just like Dora here, we need to go out and look for our data. That could be asking for the data from people who have access to the data. It could be looking at surveys. It could be asking people questions. It could be a whole lot of things. The next thing we have is receive data. And so once we have the data, we need to make sure that we organize it, we take it, we do something with it. So you can see here we have a nice organized cupboard of files and things like that. It's important that when we get that data, we put it into a form that we can easily use to then go and do something with it. The last point is communicate data. So data is useless unless we actually tell people about our data. We actually share it with people so that they can then do the things that they need to do with the data. When we're communicating with data, we need to firstly think about the complexity of the data or the message that we're trying to send. We can have both simple and complex messages. Simple messages are obviously the most easy to deliver and also the most easy to receive. And so where possible, it is always better to simplify the message. But sometimes we can simplify a message too far and we can lose some of the meaning from it. So we might need to keep some of the complexity of it. Um, yeah. We can also look at our tone. The tone of voice that we use can also impart meaning on the message that we're trying to send, and it could back up some meaning, or it could contradict some meaning that we're trying to do. So for instance, a neutral voice is what I'm aiming for right now. It's neither positive or negative. I'm just delivering facts. So I'm not trying to be either positive or negative. A positive tone, like here, could be useful if you're delivering a positive message. You want someone to be excited about the fact they've got a promotion, or they've got a bonus or something like that. Similarly, a negative tone can help to reinforce a negative message. If you're disappointed in someone's behavior, then you wouldn't say, "Hi, I'm really unhappy that you did this thing." You would want to enforce that with a negative tone as well. Um, Obviously, the inverse is also not wanted. So if you have some negative news, you don't want to enforce that with a positive tone. Oh, congratulations, you're fired. It doesn't work. Okay, so you need to make sure that you match the tone with the message that you're trying to send. The next is the methods. So in what ways can we deliver a message? Okay, we have memos, which is basically like a written email. We have visualization software. So this is things like graphs and a whole lot of spreadsheets and stuff where you can interact with the data and move around based on selections that you make. Emails, as you would know, graphs, reports, which we've seen before, conversations, you can talk to people, and you can have meetings on a larger scale. We also need to look at the audience. Yeah, we need to look at the audience. Okay, so our audience would interpret a message, and when we're delivering a message, the way someone interprets it is always the fault of the person delivering the message. So you can't blame someone for saying, "Oh, I misunderstood." All right, it's the job of the person delivering the message to ensure that it is received in the right way. So you need to make sure you deliver it in a way that cannot be misinterpreted. So in that case, you also need to consider the people you're speaking to, the audience that's receiving that message. You need to think about their mood. If they're in a happy mood, then they may be not concentrating on details. So they may gloss over certain things. If you're delivering a very detailed message, you might need to try to gain their focus first before delivering that message. Similarly, if they're in a bad mood, then they may not focus on the details, but also they may not be receptive to your message. They may lash out at you. They may do certain things, especially if the message you're sending is negative one. Your message might be the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So you need to think about people's mood, and you need to modify the way you deliver that message. Maybe moderate the message a little bit, make it a bit softer, or maybe get their attention, ensure they've got that attention before you deliver that message. We look at cultural needs. So Australia being the multicultural country that it is, there are a range of cultural needs that people have. Different gestures can be misinterpreted in different cultures. Different words can have different meanings. Even different facial expressions can mean different things. So you need to ensure that you know the audience that you're delivering to, and if you deal with a culture predominantly, you need to make sure that you know the nuances of communicating in that culture so that you don't unintentionally send the wrong message. Differences in education can affect people as well. So obviously, um, people will have different literacy needs. So people may have finished school, people may have not finished school, people might have gone to university, people might have doctorates. So all of these people would have different knowledge of language and different abilities with language. But also you're looking at the different skills that people have and different knowledge that people have as well. So we look at jargon or technical language, and the way I speak to someone who isn't very good with computers is completely different to the way I speak to someone who is very familiar with computers. Oftentimes, the way I speak to students can be different to the way I speak to teachers because there is a difference in education, there's a difference in skills, there's a difference in experience, there's a difference in the language that they would use and the language they would understand. So you need to consider the differences in education that you have when you're delivering to an audience. You need to also think about disabilities. So obviously, with a person who is vision impaired, if you're delivering a visual message like the message I'm delivering now, then it's probably not going to work. You need to make sure that any message you deliver to a vision impaired person has an audio component, or it has a method to enable you to access some accessibility features. So you might have some alt text in a website, for instance, that a screen reader could read to tell a blind person what that picture is saying. You might make sure that your text is easily able to be read by a screen reader and so on. If they're mobility impaired, perhaps they're going to a meeting on the second floor and there's only stairs. A person in a wheelchair may not be able to get to that meeting. So you need to make sure that a mobility impaired person is not disadvantaged because of their mobility impairment. Color blindness is an important one. Not everyone sees colors the same. There is common color blindness with a few colors. Red and brown come to mind quite often. And you can see here the difference. For people who aren't colorblind, we see the @ symbol. But for people who are, they would only see a circle with random dots in it. You need to make sure when you're delivering a visual message that colors that are common in color blindness are not together. Um, and then there is a high level of contrast in your images so that everyone can appreciate what you're trying to show. And also hearing impairment. So you need to make sure that you speak clearly. You need to make sure that there is an alternative method to access any audible messages. So it could be subtitles or some other way to communicate that meaning. Okay, and that is seek, receive, and communicate information and ideas.